It is once again time to hit the most creative, the best Swiss Army knife any real estate investor can have. And that is a 90% CLTV, the 50-40-10. This is a tool that, if I am correct, and the housing market slows down in the second half, and the small multifamily slows down in the second half, trust me when I say you are going to need to understand how to leverage the 50-40-10. And I always have this conversation with the only lender that I know that does 90% CLTV, Mr. Stephen Dow from Velocity Mortgage. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
I'm doing well, man. Do me a favor, get that marketing spiel out of the way so we can get into this creative
I
tool.
was wondering, I'm like, it's been 2 weeks. I wonder if Mike's going to remember. But yes, although I work very happily for Velocity Mortgage Capital, all the ideas and topics discussed on this channel are that of my own. So let's get it going.
So let's break this thing down on why it's the most flexible, the best Swiss Army knife for any serious real estate investor. I really see it as a step pattern that we can get for folks. So let's first assume nobody understands what I mean by 90% CLTV. So please educate us on that fact first.
You got it. So CLTV stands for combined loan to value. That basically just means that it's a representation of the combination of my loan, which would be in first position, typically ideally at 50%. And then the 90% CLTV applies to where we would allow secondary financing to go behind my first loan to a maximum leverage of 90% total. So in any combination, right, 75-15, 60-30, anything along those lines to a total maximum of 90%. That would then allow you to have to only put down the remaining 10% down. So it's been pretty I mean, it's been very impactful in a lot of different, scenarios. It's just got to find that, that type of deal out there. But if you do the work, they're out there.
No, they're, and again, they're, if I'm right, and again, caveat, all of that. If the market continues to slow down in the second half, if it takes a big old gigantic freeze because of the election,
Right.
we're going to have a lot of opportunities to write creative offers. And again, in a market that's very much a seller's market, you really can't get creative. But in a buyer's market where sellers have to sell, this is where creativity reigns. And I just want to bring up a real life example Matt, the mortgage guy, talked about on Wednesday, where he said, hey, I found a single family home, been on the market 88 days, three price drops, owned free and clear. Let's go talk seller financing, right? So his first, enclave was to confirm they own it free and clear, and they do. Then he tried to get, 90% seller financing, which the seller didn't want. I'm like, dude, go after the 50-40-10. Go get them to go give them 60% of the cash, because this is the beauty of the loan. Right. The buyer brings in 10%, Velocity brings in 50%. So the seller walks away with 60% of the cash. Then they hold back, in this example, 40% on a note that brings in payments, and they delay taxes and all that other benefit stuff that we talk about. Those, I'm telling you, folks, if you are doing the work, those deals will become more prevalent and more obvious. Take your shots, just like Matt, the mortgage guy, and he and I talked after. Dude, the seller doesn't want to do 90% seller financing. Good try, right? You should try. But if they don't, try a 50-40-10 and see if you can get them to do that, right?
Right. I mean, worst thing to say is no, and then kind of build from there, because at some point you might be able to hit that comfort level where it still makes sense. I mean, the ideal situation where it's maybe a little bit more in your favor, obviously you would want that, so you started at that standpoint. But if you kind of work your way and maybe meet them somewhere more in the middle, then sometimes it works out. It's just takes that more meaningful conversation to kind of get the the ball rolling. But again, it's just crunching the numbers, giving me a call to kind of break it all down, have me understand kind of, what the options are and what the numbers look like. And then we can kind of tool it around and play around, given if you know what the market rents are, and then kind of figuring out from there, obviously your mid-FICO score, what your offer price is going to be, and then we can kind of back into all of that. So I've been doing a lot of those types of scenarios, believe it or not. I being off the channel for the last couple of weeks because you've been on vacation, squeaky wheel gets the oil, or out of sight, out of mind. So, but when we do these videos, I do quite a bit of those scenarios.
Dude, I'm going to just call it right now. I think my channel attracts investors, And hopefully they're hearing me with how excited I am about the next 5 months and doing these kind of creative deals. The other thing you talked about, meaningful conversations, folks, these 50-40-10s are not one call closes. You're going to have to meet them. You're going to have to talk to them. You're going to have to educate them. You're going to have to prove to them you're a real buyer, but they are out there and they are possible. So the next thing I want to talk about, make sure everybody understands why this is the best Swiss Army knife, the most flexible loan product, is something that is called the blended interest rate. So let's define what a blended interest rate. We've already done 90% leverage. Now let's talk blended interest rate.
Right. So, I mean, that's just basically the combined payments between my first mortgage and the seller, and typically the seller in second position, their terms on their loan. So although my loan might be at, say, 8.74, right, 30-year fixed, that's on only 50% of the loan, or the purchase price, I should say, and the remaining 40% that the seller's carrying, I mean, I've seen it as low as 1% interest only on a 10-year balloon. So when you can blend that along with my 8.74 in the first, I believe that's somewhere in the low fives, mid fives. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to do the actual math and everything else. And
that's the key to this. That's the key to this. If you can do this right, you can pay a little more and actually get a lower payment. You give the seller an extra 10 grand to get an extra low interest rate, because we're cash flow investors. We're not flippers. We're not, this or that. We're trying to stack assets that we can hold for 10 years or more, if not forever, because we know inflation's a feature, not a bug. And we know that over enough time and having enough assets, we will get wealthy. That's just math. So when I think about blended interest rate, right, think about this. I mean, just do a 40-40-20 just for fun. Velocity comes in at 40%, at 9%. I'm just using round numbers. You get the seller to do 1%. There's an 8% spread. So that's a 5% mortgage rate.
Right.
Let's not get confused. That's a 5% mortgage rate on an 80% levered loan. Because in this example, I assume the other 20 was a down payment. But this, please hear me. In a slowing market, some people have to sell.
Yep.
And some people are in a position where creative financing will work. Now, if you have somebody that has to sell and they have no equity, you got to try something else. But again, please understand the flexibility and power of the 90% CLTV. It's like nothing else.
Agreed. I mean, I'm looking at our funding, sheet and daily submissions. When I believe we're on record pace, at least for this month, year over year. So the business is out there for sure. As far as those types of
again, I want
to
hit this. More is coming, folks. In a slowing housing market where buyers pull back, the investors, the creatives, the folks that are doing the work, we get hungry, we get greedy. I want to give a shout out to Ty. He gave us a 6-hour masterclass on creative financing inside our school community. Folks,
oh wow,
you should be getting excited about what's going on. It's time.
No, agreed. I mean, when there's pain in the street, that's when opportunity arises. Because again, like you said, there's going to be situations where people just have to sell. Not that you're preying on, people's downfall, but circumstances are circumstances, and timing is everything in life. And it just depends on, are you the nail or are you the hammer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but in any case, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm seeing pretty good, numbers myself personally from this standpoint. But as far as opportunity out there, just do the work, like your hat says, like the signs in the back. Once you do, I think that's where the
last thing I want to point out is you got to get in the right communities. You got to join this one rental at a time school community. You got to be around other people doing this, so you can just throw questions out. Hey, I'm looking at this deal. This is the situation. What would you do? That's the kind of stuff I hope happens in the school community. It's where my experts are, so I tag them so they can answer questions. It's this is a resource. This is a resource. This is where we're getting everybody in the school community pays to be there. So we're all rowing the same direction. We all have different experiences, and we want everybody to win. We realize that being a go-giver helps everyone. So, Stephen, if somebody wanted to reach out and ask more questions about the 90% CLTV, how do they do that?
Email is always best. That's going to be DAO at Velocity, the word mortgage spelled out.com. In the subject line, please put the acronym ORAAT to make it past the firewall, the body, the email, maybe a brief description, what you're looking for. Your mid-FICO score would be great. Address would really help out, or at least city and state, to make sure I can lend there. And then best phone number to reach out in typically 24, 48 hours. I'll be in touch.
Awesome, buddy. I appreciate you so much. Folks, 90% CLTV, blended interest rates. Understand it. Understand the math. Let's go.